3 women, 1 man. What had begun as love quickly turned into cheating and betrayal and drama. And when all 3 women met at his door, chaos ensued in Kafunda. Here's the whole story. So it was a hot afternoon. The traffic jam was heavy. The sound of cars and matatu conductors yelling, soliciting for passengers was just deafening. And you can imagine that on a hot day. I was in an old taxi driven by an old man with a bald. The driver kept passing his hand over the bowl to wipe the sweat that kept forming in his head. It was that hot, really hot. The AC did not work. The driver, when I asked, he had tried to explain that he had bought the taxi that way and added that AC was just an expensive luxury he could not afford. I was sweating. I was sleepy. But then the discomfort was so much that it couldn't just let me rest. I could not sleep. Then the old driver clumsily pulled over. He almost hit a bystander by the road. He added 2 passengers to the taxi. Both were women, very chatty women, very flamboyant and loud. They entered where they talked. They talked as if the bold driver and I were not there in the car with them. They were talking about men. It's always men. The way they talked, men were very disgraceful creatures, capable of no good. They kept breaking into loud laughter. After each loud joke, they were narrating to each other the pathetic experiences they'd had with men in the city. Then the loudest one turned to the other, laughed hard and screamed, "You think you know it all? You think you've seen it all here? You think you've seen it? Let me tell you." Then she said loudly, "Men are rags, I'm telling you. They are just rags. They are not good. They are just rags." The driver with the board slammed the brakes, almost choked on his charcoal. When she said that, he eyed her through the rearview mirror and blinked rapidly and hard, then turned and looked at me. His eyes were gaping. I just sank deeper in my seat. Meanwhile, what? Then she made a loud laugh of disgust and contempt, and she started to tell it. So my guys, she started to tell it. It had been a Friday in the afternoon. She was excited. She was going for what she called a weekend marriage to Juma's place, her darling of a boyfriend. She and Juma had been dating for 5 good years. He had assured her she was the one. He was done with the other city girls. Every time he had said those words, she had believed him, believed the guy, believed her Juma. Juma did not have much. When he said that, in fact, she paused and chuckled, corrected herself. Juma had nothing to his name, but was the one. She loved him. Juma had sworn by hand, kept swearing that they were going to move in together very soon. Yeah, it was serious. Juma was going to move in with her. He had plans. He was working up a few things to make way for her in his single-room house. Yeah, was making plans. Poor Juma was going to make it all happen in no time. In the meantime, they had devised a plan. Every Friday, she would pack her small bag with a few essentials and head for Juma's little place for weekend wife duties. She loved it. She envisioned herself his wife already. There at his place, she would cook, she would wash a week's worth of piling utensils. She washed the basket of clothes that had been waiting. It was all joy for her. She did it with all joy. When she was done, she would leave a sparkling clean house for Juma to use for the rest of the coming week. She would kiss him goodbye on a Sunday evening, sometimes on a Monday morning, depending on how the weekend was. That was their sweet weekend marriage kind of arrangement. So that Friday, like many past Fridays, she packed her small bag. She chuckled at the memory. Then she said to her friend, it was madness. And for what? She had overly estimated men's reasoning. That's what she thought and told her friend. But not to overdwell, that Friday she jumped onto a boda, a motorcycle taxi, a very ubiquitous mode of transport in the city. When the border guy asked where she was going, she told him, Kafunda. He asked again to be sure. When she confirmed, he shook his head in disbelief. All border guys did that. When she would say that she was going to Kafunda, they would all shake their head and say, wow. They wondered what kind of person lived in Kafunda and still received visitors as our good lady. Kafunda was where Hajuma lived. In fact, when she mentioned Kafunda to the friend, she had paused herself and chuckled and laughed herself hard and loud. We all knew the Kafunda she meant. When she said it, the driver turned and looked at me and shook his head. Now, let me tell you about Kafunda. Kafunda was a place on the city's edge, in a valley. It was considered to be the place of the paupers and the beggarly, the lowest of the lowest, the ones hit hard by city's economic extremities. Kafunda was an overflow of tent-like makeshifts, a muddy swampish patch. A stream of sewage ran through it, right in its middle. And when it rained, that stream would flood with all its waste into people's makeshifts. So when they reached the border, guy could not access it. There was no proper road, so he dropped off our good lady at a distance, as usual. She trekked the rest of the way. The way was rough and irritating. Twice, she had to jump over children's poop. Or was it? Once she almost slipped into a trench, and her tight cream pants had all got stained so badly. Her sneakers were all red with mud, and her back was all slimy with sweat. But that was nothing. She had seen worse. A year ago, someone had poured a full basin of soapy water on our good lady. The mean woman was from washing her baby. She had not even stopped to show remorse. She simply walked back to her makeshift. The path through Kafunda was a dumping place, so the onus was on the walker. If you're walking through, you have to be just careful not to be poured of things onto you. Our good lady was in love. Love forgives many things, including poo and dirty soapy water. Finally, she arrived at Juma's place, the one-room makeshift. When our good lady reached, she found a girl sitting on a bench right outside Juma's one-roomed makeshift apartment. The girl was short and bony. She wore red tight shorts ripped all over and had a butterfly tattoo on her shoulder. The bench was right by the door to Juma's room. She was scrolling through her phone, a bag slung lazily over her shoulder, and she was chewing loudly and wildly. When she greeted the skinny girl, the girl didn't respond. She turned, looked at her, rolled her eyes, and kept scrolling and chewing. It was Kafunda. People had attitude and sat anywhere, she had thought. She knocked and kept knocking once, twice. When our good lady knocked the third time, the skinny girl turned and hissed at her, told her to stop making noise for her. She wanted to reply, say something nasty about her chewing and her wild red ripped up shorts of a rag. But she held herself. It was not going to be this skinny girl that ruined the good mood she was in for her Juma, So our good lady kept knocking. The skinny girl turned again and jeered loudly. Then she stopped, pulled out her phone. She dialed Juma's number. It went through, but Juma did not pick. She tried again. Still Juma didn't pick. Finally, she gave up. There was some small space on the bench where the skinny girl sat. After some contemplation, she sat beside her. Like the skinny girl, our good lady began scrolling through her phone lazily. The skinny girl was chewing loudly, almost right into her ear. She had persevered. Soon, Juma would be home. She called 3 more times, and 3 more times, Juma didn't come to the phone. The girl chuckled every time she picked up her phone and dialed. At that time, not a single word was really exchanged between the two of them. At some point, the skinny girl paused her scrolling. She reached right into her tight pockets and pulled out a dirty, roughed-up packet of cigarettes. She lit one, sat there smoking and blowing her smoke all over the place, while coughing wildly like our good lady wasn't there with her. At that point, she had wanted to say something, anything nasty, but what could she say? That the skinny girl had not heard before. In fact, on closer examination, skinny girl looked like someone who could outdo her in words. Finally, Juma showed up. Reaching Juma's one-roomed house required meandering. You could never see anyone approach. All of a sudden, one was in front of his door. You had to ramble through a compact maze of makeshift houses. So, our good lady sat there, lazing on her phone, the skinny girl blowing her smoke without a care all over the place. And suddenly, Juma appeared before them. When he did, skinny girl, the one that had been smoking, was instantly on her feet. Juma had wanted to turn back immediately, but he couldn't. He was already caught in their waiting presence. There was no way of turning back. The skinny girl stood face to face with Juma, and right away, she started hurling insults after insult at Juma. Juma stood there, dumbfounded, staring down. You see, Juma had come escorted by another lady. Skinny girl was mad about it. That's when a good lady realized she had been waiting with a co-girlfriend. Skinny girl wasn't some random wanderer at Juma's door. She was one of them and had come for the same purpose, weekend wife duties, just like our good lady. So, skinny girl with her nasty shorts, the big woman Juma had arrived with, and her good lady made a total of 3 women. All at Juma's door. All had turned up for weekend wife duties that Friday. As she sat there in shock, confounded by the serendipitous revelation of Juma's infidelity, a shouting match ensued. When she raised her head to see, it was skinny girl and a gigantic woman Juma had arrived with. The big woman was not just voluminous, she was tall, a giant, tall and bigger than Juma. It made her wonder what Juma had been thinking when he had decided to date her. The argument for both women was over how each had come to know their good Juma. Both were mad at each other, each wondering what the other was doing at their man's place. Skinny girl moved, stood in front of the big woman, leaving Juma alone. She seemed to stand before a wall, a mountain of a wall. If you stood behind the big woman, you would not see the skinny girl anywhere. You would not see her. Skinny girl's high-pitched voice and the big woman's condescending coarse bass quickly rang through Kafunda blazing. Their voices were so loud, even Kafunda's usual chaos was no match. A crowd started to form. Juma moved and leaned against his makeshift house, watching the 2 women debate their knowledge of him. Everything unfolding before her eyes, a good lady engulfed her in more shock. Why were the 2 women shouting at each other instead of the culprit Juma? Sure, he was there. Why not shout at him? Juma never turned to look at her, not even once. It was as if our good lady was never there at all. While she was still musing over her position in Juma's life, the congregating crowd burst into cheers. When she turned, Skinny girl had jumped and sprung and landed on the big woman's shoulders. The big woman was swinging her head violently, trying to get rid of Skinny girl. Then Skinny girl started raining blows, blow after blow, on the big woman, on her head. The crowd roared. Children jittered around the fighting pair. The big woman finally hauled her off, and Skinny girl went flying into the mud with the big woman's wig in her bony hands. The big woman then threw herself on top of Skinny girl. Now the crowd was big, caught up in a frenzy. A tight circle formed around the fighters. You could barely see them outside the ring. She looked for Juma, our good lady. Juma was no longer standing idle. Who was it? Juma had joined the cheering crowd, and she heard him joke with the Kafunda boys. It's the winner. I'll choose. It's the winner I'm going with. And while he went on cheering and cheering. When she heard that, she thought, oh my God, her heart would crash. It didn't. That's when it struck her. Men were rags. She chuckled, laughed hard when she told her friend. The driver with the bald looked at me. He shook his head. He didn't know what to say. As the crowd roared and cheered, she had made a decision, our good lady. She was done with Juma and the rags of men. She was done. Our good lady had a guy who drove a taxi. He was always in her inbox. The guy who drove a taxi had insisted she was the one. She'd spent one night at his place recently. When she left the next morning, the guy with the taxi had given her a bag of cash. That guy with the taxi had been wanting to take her out one of these weekends. Slowly, our good lady found her way through the crowd. The big woman was still on top of the Skinny girl. Skinny girl was shouting and pleading for the big woman to get off her. Juma had found his winner, she had thought. Meandering through the randomly placed makeshifts, the chaos behind her grew distant. At a distance, our good lady pulled out her phone, found the number of the guy who drove a taxi. She called him. She wanted to see him this weekend. He said he would be at his place and would refund her transport fare. When she reached the road, our good lady found a border. That weekend, she spent it at the place of the guy who drove a taxi. That's where she spent it. Men are rags, she repeated to herself. She told her friend, men are rags. Then they laughed hard with a friend. She said she was over men, over the pathetic relationships. She said she went where they paid cash. They laughed hard again. Then she told the taxi driver to let her off at the next junction, which was coming up. She turned to her friend. There was a guy who worked in government. He was waiting for her at that pub just close to the junction. Men are rags, she repeated. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us to this far. At EzroniX, we tell stories like this to remind us that humanity looks like this. It's raw, flawed, searching, and still capable of change. We tell these stories to inspire better choices and spark real conversations about love, trust, and all other issues that are at the center of our becoming. If this story moved you, leave a comment, share it, and subscribe to EzroniX Stories. Find our links below for EzroniX website for more stories like this that you can read in your free time. And also sign up for our newsletter for weekly story updates. Well, I remain Ezron here at EzroniX. Till next week. Adios.